Akihito Kenbara, a sophomore in high school, is a loner who keeps to himself. One day he spots Mirai Kiriyama, a freshman, teetering on the brink of leaping from the school rooftop. Acting on instinct, he rushes to her rescue. However, Mirai reacts with irritation, thrusting a vivid crimson blade through Akihito's heart. Some time later, Akihito, along with his friend Mitsuki Nase, diligently assembles an anthology for their literary club when Mirai unexpectedly disrupts their work. It becomes clear that Mirai has been tailing Akihito for an entire week with the sinister intent of terminating him. Nevertheless, Mirai's efforts prove fruitless due to Akihito's unexpected indestructibility as a half-yomu. Following this encounter, Mitsuki playfully mocks Akihito for being under Mirai's watchful eye and cautions him to keep his distance. During another post-school confrontation with Mirai, Akihito discovers the tragic fate of her family, the Kiriyama clan. Their potent ability to forge weapons from their own blood led to their annihilation, leaving Mirai as the sole survivor. Later, Mirai pursues Akihito into a classroom, where their confrontation is abruptly interrupted by a yomu bursting through the window. Suddenly, Shizuku Ninomiya, a renowned spirit world warrior, arrives to deal with the intruder. Later, Akihito treats Mirai to a meal and learns that she had been using him as a training partner before being left with an unanswered question. Meanwhile, Shizuku vanquishes the preceding yomu and extracts a gem from its core. The next day, Mitsuki once again advises Akihito to steer clear of Mirai, but he chooses to engage in a conversation with her after school instead. While having dinner at the playground, Akihito discovers that a malevolent yomu had been haunting Mirai's home, in addition to her deep aversion to her cursed abilities and the act of taking a life. Empathizing with her, Akihito resolves to assist Mirai in eliminating the yomu, and together they confront the malevolent entity at her residence. Akihito momentarily drifts into thought as they confront the yomu, while Mirai successfully forces it outside. Mirai pursues and engages in a fierce showdown with the yomu at the playground. After a challenging struggle, she manages to land a blow near its eye, but the creature escapes. Mirai's determination falters, and she suggests leaving it alone. However, Akihito warns her about her diminishing finances, urging her to continue the pursuit. Mirai then removes her ring, amplifying her powers, and splashes corrosive blood on the yomu. The creature becomes immobilized, and Mirai proceeds to destroy its eye, ultimately killing it and revealing an ultramarine stone at its core. Akihito tends to Mirai's wounds and extends an invitation for her to join the literary club, which she declines before passing out. The following day, Akihito and Mirai take the yomu stone to an expert for assessment. Instead, they are greeted by the humanoid yomu, Aishindo. This prompts Mirai to instinctively draw her sword before they explain the various aspects of yomu and the appraisal process to her. At school, Akihito attempts to gather information about the recent yomu attack's aggressiveness from Hirumi Nase, who is Mitsuki's older brother but is unsuccessful. Later, Akihito visits the appraiser, Ayaka Shindo, in hopes of learning the contents of a postcard from his mother, Yaoi Kenbara. In the postcard, Yaoi warns him about the imminent arrival of a formidable yomu known as the Hollow Shadow, which lacks a physical body. Ayaka explains that after its last appearance, it effortlessly defeated 5 experienced spirit warriors, and the recent surge of low-level yomu was likely a result of its proximity. Afterwards, Ayaka evaluates Mirai's yomu stone, and Mirai uses the money to treat Akihito to a beef bowl, while pleading with him not to become further entangled in her affairs due to the fact that she had taken someone's life. The next day, Mirai pursues a lesser yomu, but when she can't bring herself to end its existence, Mitsuki arrives and dispatches it. She offers Mirai the yomu stone as a gesture of goodwill, but Mirai declines it as an act of charity. Meanwhile, an investigator from the Spirit World Warriors Observation Department named Miroku Fujima meets with Izumi Nase to discuss the impending arrival of the Hollow Shadow. At school, Akihito makes yet another futile attempt to persuade Mirai to visit the literary club and gather information about her from Hirumi. Later, Mitsuki arranges for Akihito to meet her at the train yard to share some confidential information she acquired from Iori Ichinomiya, an intelligence officer among the Spirit World Warriors who gives people information. Mitsuki discloses that Mirai may target the Hollow Shadow, and reveals her adoption by the Inami clan, who lost their daughter at the hands of Mirai during a confrontation with the yomu itself. Meanwhile, as the Hollow Shadow enters Nagatsuki City, casting an eerie purple glow from the moon, Akihito endeavors to prevent Mirai from pursuing the yomu. Mirai confides in Akihito about her connection to the Inami clan, and the tragic incident in which she took the life of her friend, Yui Inami, out of fear after the Hollow Shadow possessed her. Despite Akihito's attempts to convey that their lives aren't so dissimilar, Mirai insists on going alone. Subsequently, Spirit World Warriors in the vicinity are tasked with establishing barriers to guide the Hollow Shadow out of the city. As the yomu in the area become increasingly tainted by the malevolence of the Hollow Shadow, Mirai approaches the city limits, preparing to confront it. However, the younger sister of Yui appears. The girl is Sakura Inami and she attacks Mirai with lethal intent just as both are engulfed and hurled into a random part of the city by the hollow shadow. Sakura has been attempting to track down Mirai to get revenue for Yui's death, but Akihito abruptly intervenes in Sakura's assault and asserts that Mirai still hasn't grasped his words. Akihito and Mirai make a frantic escape from Sakura's relentless assault, navigating through the illusory maze conjured by the hollow shadow. They reach a distorted replica of the train yard, where Mirai becomes ensnared by the shadow, which takes on the appearance of Yui. Akihito snaps Mirai out of her trance just in the nick of time, preventing the shadow from claiming her life. The shadow then reveals its true form and launches an attack on Mirai, who retaliates by injecting its body with a substantial dose of corrosive blood, resulting in its destruction. After finding themselves back on the mountaintop, Mirai confides in Akihito about her self-image. Akihito responds sincerely, and at that moment, the weakened shadow seizes control of Akihito's body. He desperately pleads with a horrified Mirai to inject him with her blood, forcing the shadow out of his body. Mirai finally annihilates the shadow. Meanwhile, Hirumi, Ayaka, and Shizuku arrive on the scene, preventing Mirai from rushing to Akihito's aid. Instead, they confine him in a cage, with Ayaka explaining that Akihito's Yomu half-awakened due to his weakened human half. Mirai watches in horror as Akihito undergoes a sudden transformation and goes into a rampage. Despite the trio's efforts to contain Akihito, they are quickly overwhelmed by his immense destructive power, with his fiery attacks wreaking havoc on the surrounding landscape. Seeing a reflection of herself in Akihito, Mirai breaks into tears and embraces him tightly until his raging Yomu half calms down. In the aftermath, as Akihito regains consciousness and laments the devastation he caused, Mirai sheds tears following his apology. Meanwhile, after observing the ordeal, Miroku decides to report back to the society. Some time later, Mirai and Akihito share a dinner outing. Eventually, Mirai ultimately yields to Akihito's persistent requests and decides to join the literary club. Following this, Mirai, Akihito, Mitsuki, and Hirumi pay a visit to the Nase mansion, where they encounter Miroku as he's departing. Izumi, in response to Mirai's insubordination and pursuit of the hollow shadow, temporarily suspends Mirai's Spirit World Warrior license for a month. Mitsuki agrees to accompany Mirai to her part-time job in the hopes of securing employment for her and ensuring her financial stability for the coming month. They have a discussion about this at a pancake house, during which Mitsuki and Mirai also explore the latter's newfound interest in socializing and Akihito's relationship with the Nase clan. Suddenly, they spot a passerby possessed by a Yomu and immediately give chase. Mirai eventually engages in combat and eliminates the Yomu, just as Shizuku arrives and expresses her gratitude by treating them to a barbecue meal. Mirai notices a poster for the annual Nagatsuki City Lantern Festival, and Mitsuki reminisces about how she was prohibited from attending the festival due to her obligations as a Spirit World Warrior. Later, Mitsuki and Mirai visit Ayaka's shop for Mitsuki's part-time job, and Ayaka decides to hire Mirai, and even persuades her to participate in a photo shoot for extra income. During their time at the shop, they discuss Akihito's sadness following his transformation into a Yomu. While minding the shop, Mirai attempts to question Mitsuki about her reluctance to attend the festival, but receives no satisfactory answer, only the notion that Spirit World Warriors are often alone. However, Mitsuki eventually has a change of heart when she recalls her childhood practice of setting up festival lanterns in her room. Finally, Mirai and Mitsuki encounter a surprised Akihito and Hirumi at the festival. In response to Akihito's confusion regarding their presence, Mirai subtly suggests that on the night of the festival, none of them have to feel alone. One day, Mirai introduces bonsai trees to the literary club meetings. Akihito quickly determines that her vast gardening hobby is the actual source of her continued financial difficulties. Meanwhile, her license has been restated, so Mirai seeks information from Ayaka regarding a valuable fruit-type Yomu lurking on the school roof. She abruptly rushes off without waiting for Ayaka to provide details. Akihito arrives too late to prevent Mirai from confronting the Yomu, resulting in both of them being drenched in a foul-smelling yellow liquid emitted by the Yomu as a defensive measure. That evening, Ai explains that the Yomu is easily distracted by human girls, necessitating a two-person team to defeat it. Thus, Akihito and Mirai persuade Mitsuki to join their efforts. The next day, Mirai attempts to entice the Yomu with seductive poses while Mitsuki approaches from behind. However, this plan quickly falters, and the Yomu marks Mitsuki with a more pink liquid. As the group contemplates giving up, Hirumi reveals that the last time the Yomu was vanquished, a special song was used to divert its attention. Unfortunately, this plan also fails when Mirai proves to be terrible at singing. Eventually, the group decides to go after the Yomu once more and spends the next week practicing the lyrics and dance choreography for a song. The team are eventually able to perfect and perform a song in front of the Yomu, which successfully lowers its guard. However, upon the song's conclusion, they horrifically realize they forgot to assign someone to eliminate the Yomu. It detonates, dousing the entire rooftop in a deluge of yellow liquid. One day, Sakura reminisces about Yui's warning regarding the formidable power of the hollow shadow while hunting an aquatic Yomu. The following day, Shizuku disrupts the literary club's usual antics to deliver news of Sakura's impending transfer to their high school. However, Mirai decides not to interfere in the situation even though Sakura has sworn to hunt her down. Later that evening, Akihito comes to Sakura's aid when she collapses after battling an airborne Yomu. He takes her home to attend to her injuries. During their conversation, Sakura reveals that her spear gains strength by consuming Yomu stones. She obtained it from a mysterious man and can keep it if she manages to eliminate Mirai. Just then, Mirai unexpectedly drops by to return Akihito's phone, inadvertently revealing Sakura's presence. This causes Mirai to lose control when she notices the second pair of shoes at Akihito's doorstep. The following day, Sakura successfully completes her transfer despite Akihito's apprehension. That afternoon, Mirai and Sakura meet in a market alley to settle their score and commence their inevitable showdown. They head into the sewers, where Mirai explains her newfound realization that seeking revenge is the wrong path and her intention to live for the sake of the Inami sisters. This revelation causes Sakura to lose her resolve to fight, at which point the spear attempts to consume her. Mirai intervenes just in time to prevent this from happening. In the aftermath, Sakura admits to losing herself at the sound of Yui's bell necklace, which had clouded her feelings for Mirai. Both of them acknowledge and accept these feelings, leading to reconciliation. With the spear having consumed enough Yomu, Miroku retrieves it with the aim of obtaining the Hollow Shadows stone. Finally, Izumi and Mitsuki bear witness to the onset of a phenomenon known as the calm as it spreads throughout Nobutsuki City, foreshadowing the emergence of something referred to as beyond the boundary. Akihito receives a postcard from Yaoi, forewarning them about the impending arrival of the calm, as the city begins to feel the effects of this unusual phenomenon. Ai and Ayaka provide an explanation, detailing that during the calm, all Yomu become significantly weakened. They also caution that Akihito's immortality from his half-Yomu self might be at risk during this period. As the group heads home later, Miroku intercepts Mitsuki and divulges that the mirrored phenomenon she had witnessed was, in fact, a fragment of a Yomu known as the One Beyond the Boundary. Miroku further elaborates that he was sent to investigate the Nase family's intentions concerning this Yomu by the society. He learned that Izumi had saved Mirai from the Inami clan's attempt to take her life after Yui's death. Overlooking the picturesque shoreline during the golden sunset, Hirumi intervenes and confronts Miroku, launching an attack before Miroku manages to escape. Meanwhile, Akihito awakens on the train during their journey home, experiencing a distressing flashback. Izumi intervenes, putting him to sleep once more. Afterwards, Ayaka decides to keep a watchful eye on Akihito at her shop as he begins to feel the effects of the calm. At midnight, the calm finally descends upon the city, prompting the Spirit World warriors, including Shizuku and Izumi, to engage in a relentless battle against every Yomu they encounter. Meanwhile, as Hirumi and Mitsuki attempt to unravel the complex conflict between their clan and the society, they become aware of Akihito's deteriorating condition. They also notice the presence of a colossal Yomu. Sakura manages to persuade Mirai to return to Akihito's side. At the same time, Ayaka intercepts Miroku outside her shop after he expresses his intention to capture Akihito for the society. She transforms into her Yomu form and initiates an attack on him. However, before Ayaka can be overwhelmed, Izumi intervenes and halts Miroku's assault. Finally, as Mirai rushes back to the shop, Akihito's Yomu half begins to awaken. Upon arriving at the Shindo shop, Mirai is filled with horror as she encounters Akihito transformed into his Yomu state. Meanwhile, Hirumi and Mitsuki are fully occupied dealing with the colossal Yomu, while Izumi confronts Miroku. However, Miroku manages to escape when a nearby fireball diverts Izumi's attention. Afterward, Izumi returns to the shop and engages Akihito in front of Mirai before he too makes his escape. Meanwhile, Hirumi and Mitsuki successfully defeat the gigantic shadow, and later rendezvous at Akihito's apartment with Izumi and Mirai. At this gathering, Mirai conveys Ayaka's explanation, that the calm had disproportionately weakened Akihito's human side compared to his Yomu half, resulting in the full awakening of Akihito's full Yomu side. As they track Akihito through the woods, Izumi suggests that Mirai may now have the opportunity to eliminate Akihito, as the calm has nullified his immortality. If the calm were to end, his Yomu side might take control, making him unstoppable. The following day, Mitsuki and Hirumi contemplate Izumi's hidden agenda. Hirumi confronts her, referencing Miroku's theories about manipulating Mirai, and how she deliberately weakened Akihito's human half with her freezing barrier, leading to his Yomu transformation. However, instead of confirming these suspicions, Izumi warns Hirumi about the society. Dissatisfied with her response, Hirumi tries to persuade Mirai to reconsider her decision to kill Akihito. Later, he gains access to the Nase family archives and makes a shocking discovery. Akihito's Yomu half is the one beyond the boundary. Meanwhile, Miroku successfully steals the Hollow Shadows stone from the Nase vault. Mirai tracks Akihito's Yomu form to a desolate area of the forest under the silver rain clouds, and engages in a fierce battle with him, eventually inflicting a mortal wound. Finally, with a heavy heart, Mirai rushes forward to deliver the final blow. In a flashback, an incident is revealed where Izumi summons Mirai to Nagatsuki City. In the present, Akihito wakes up in his apartment to find that Mirai has been taking care of him following his transformation into a Yomu. They later arrive at the literary club, where Mirai explains that she exists within Akihito through a portion of her blood, and they are essentially a part of his dream since he remained unconscious after their last encounter. Mirai goes on to reveal her original mission in Nagatsuki City to eliminate the Beyond the Boundary Yomu. However, she couldn't bring herself to harm Akihito, who is secretly the Beyond the Boundary. Instead, during the calm, she used her blood to draw the Yomu out of Akihito and into herself before disappearing. As their conversation comes to an end, Mirai kisses Akihito, and the dream abruptly concludes, leaving Akihito in a state of shock. 6 months earlier, Izumi summons Mirai to Nagatsuki City and presents her to the Nase family head. They enlist her assistance in eradicating the Beyond the Boundary Yomu residing within Akihito Kanbara, aiming to act before the Spirit World Warriors Society can seize control. Mirai eventually transfers to Nagatsuki High but repeatedly fails in her attempts to eliminate Akihito. Instead, she forms a deeper connection with him. Despite Izumi's warnings to maintain emotional distance, Mirai cannot help but empathize with Akihito's suffering, particularly during the Hollow Shadow incident. She eventually confides in Izumi, expressing her decision not to kill Akihito. Izumi then employs her freezing barrier to facilitate the Yomu's emergence from Akihito's body during the calm, manipulating Mirai into believing that she can save him by sacrificing herself to the Yomu, a choice to which Mirai reluctantly agrees. Elsewhere, in the snowy expanse of the Mirror World, Mirai embarks on her journey towards the core of the Beyond the Boundary. After emerging from his 3-month-long coma, Akihito receives the distressing news from Hirumi and Mitsuki that his separation from the Beyond the Boundary seemingly led to Mirai's death and the loss of his own immortality. Frustrated and desperate for answers, Akihito demands to speak with Izumi, although Hirumi attempts to convey the futility of such a conversation. Much to their surprise, Izumi appears as if on cue and proceeds to explain the nature Izumi of the Beyond the Boundary. She explains how she utilized Mirai's cursed blood to confront and vanquish the Beyond the Boundary. However, when Mirai refused to end Akihito's life, Izumi was compelled to reveal an alternative method to save him, which Mirai readily accepted. Later that evening, Akihito opens the last email he received from Mirai, where she tells him how their meeting enabled her to find self-acceptance and peace with herself. Meanwhile, Miraku determines that the weakened Beyond the Boundary had retreated into another dimension to engage in a battle with Mirai while simultaneously absorbing supernatural energy from the real world. Miraku proceeds to utilize the spear to infuse a substantial amount of energy into the Beyond the Boundary. This action unveils a black sphere hovering above the city, which begins to attract and absorb all of the city's Yomu. Amidst the ensuing chaos, Akihito and his companions are summoned to the literary club, where Yue imparts the astonishing news of Mirai's survival and her ongoing battle against the Beyond the Boundary. She presents Akihito with a shard of the Beyond the Boundary's stone, allowing him to partially regain his powers. Yue explains that this shard emerged when he was possessed by the Hollow Shadow. Finally, disregarding Izumi's warning, Akihito manages to penetrate the black sphere by merging with Mirai's puppet version of himself. He intervenes during her destructive confrontation with the Beyond the Boundary. Upon Mirai and Akihito's joyful reunion, Izumi demands that Yue provide an exact explanation of what a half-Yomu is. However, Yue swiftly escapes after cautioning them about the society's movements. At the same time, Akihito employs his Yomu powers to defend against the relentless attacks from the Beyond the Boundary. Together, he and Mirai venture toward the core of the mysterious entity. Elsewhere, the rest of the team all confront Miraku and give battle. Yet, he promptly seals himself and Izumi within a protective barrier to shield them from external interference. Back in the Mirror World, Mirai and Akihito narrowly reach the core of the Beyond the Boundary. There, Mirai skillfully impales it with her sword. Meanwhile, Hirumi enters Miraku's protective barrier and discovers that both Miraku and Izumi host Yomu entities within their bodies. Additionally, Izumi's true identity is much different from the persona she presents. Izumi then impales Miraku with her spear, resulting in his apparent self-destruction. In another realm, Akihito and Mirai confront and conquer their haunting memories within the core of the Beyond the Boundary. They find themselves locked in a fierce battle against a multitude of Yomu creatures. Ultimately, Akihito subdues the Beyond the Boundary, reabsorbing it into his own being. As the Beyond the Boundary vanishes, along with the Mirror World, Mirai and Akihito share a tender moment before her disappearance. Sometime later, the world returns to its ordinary state, with the incident involving the Beyond the Boundary being concealed. Hirumi assumes control of the Nase clan. Akihito, however, grieves the absence of Mirai in his life and keeps her ring in memory of her. But suddenly it disappears one day, and he rushes to the school rooftop to miraculously find a living Mirai waiting for him. And this is all for this video. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.